Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mario Cristobal, the Miami Hurricanes, continuing to work their way through fall camp. And we got a fun episode to get into where I want to get into a lot of different talking points. Look, we go and talk some fall camp buzz, talk about some players that we think are taking that step going into 2025. I also want to talk about how this team is fundamentally different going into 2025 than what we saw in 2024. And I also want to get into a little bit of a game one preview against Notre Dame. As Notre Dame goes through fall camp, we're starting to learn a little bit more about Notre Dame and what to expect in that week one matchup. And I'll say this right off the bat, that game feels bigger than just a top 10 matchup. What I mean by that is, look, it's an opportunity for Miami to play host to a team that just played for a national championship. That's a consensus top 5 team in the country. Hey, massive, you win this football game, massive resume booster for the college football playoffs. It feels bigger than that. Mario Cristobal came back to Miami to return Miami to where they belong in the college football landscape. Sunday night against a team that's coming off a national championship game appearance. The eyes of the nation are going to be on this game. This is an opportunity for Miami as a program to show where they are at in 2025 and where they're going over the next couple of years. Feels just a little bit big. It feels like the biggest game that this program has seen in a very, very long time, not only from a college football playoff conversation, but from an optics conversation as well. Want to get into a little bit of what to expect in that football game as well. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, to the Miami Hurricane fans, appreciate you guys. Many of y'all have been rocking with the boys for a very long time. Many of y'all know I love talking this program. The amount of support that y'all continue to show to the fellas has been amazing. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, what makes this team different? I don't think it's all it's not rocket science, right? And I had a Miami Hurricane fan ask me this the other day. Is this a more talented team in 2025 than what we saw in 2024? I don't know. I think both the team in 2025 and the team in 2024 had the talent to beat anybody in the country. There's no question mark about, is the talent on this roster good enough to go compete at the highest level, because it is. And we've seen Miami recruit that way. They've used the transfer portal that way. The fundamental difference is it's a more complete football team in 2025. I look at this team and say, can it take on the identity of what we saw Michigan take on in 2023 when they won the national championship? That is, hey, we got a great running back room. We have a dominant offensive line, and we think we fixed our problems on the defensive side of the football. Look, is Miami's defense going to be as good as Michigan's defense was in 2023? I don't know, but I think they have more weapons on offense. Now this is coming from a Michigan fan. I think Miami's offensive line going to be better than what Michigan's was in 2023. The reason I bring it up is that the best part about Michigan in 2023, and this is coming from a Michigan fan that lived it all the way through, was that there were not a lot of games that got hairy in the second half because Michigan's game control was absolutely elite. Hey, we going to run the football. We're going to control the time possession. And these opposing offenses, they're just not going to have the opportunity to touch the football and score a lot of points. The biggest difference between this team in 2025 and the team that we saw in 2024 was Miami had to win in shootouts last year. And we knew we had problems. The problems that Miami experienced in the secondary last year, those did not come out of nowhere. Like we knew there were problems last year in fall camp about the secondary. We feel like Miami's fixed it. And if they fix their defense enough, Miami has the opportunity to be a football team in 2025 that avoids these shootout games, can control games more, can, 14-3 in the first half. And then it's a 28-10 win. And we're not sweating in the fourth quarter. The biggest difference is I think Miami's not only a more complete team, they have the opportunity to be a football team that can control games a lot better than they did in the 2024 year. 2024 year was almost like, hey, whoever has the football last, going to win the game. Good thing we had Cam Ward, because when he had the football last, normally Miami was coming out on top. Ideally, in 2025, you don't have to sweat the fourth quarter nearly as much as Miami had to in the 2024 year because you can lean on the run game and control games a little bit more. What is this team? How is it going to look different? One of the things that I've been putting a lot of thought into is the offensive identity. Do we see some more two tight end sets? And this has a lot more to do with what Miami wants to do on offense. The thing I respect the most about Shannon Dawson is, yes, he's going to scheme it up, and he has a scheme that he wants to get to. There ain't no question mark about that. He's going to lean into the personnel that he has. In 2024, it was Cam Ward, who was the number one overall draft pick, and a bunch of NFL talent at wide receiver. So we going to spread you out, and we're going to throw the ball all around the yard. And going into the 2025 year, we have 3 running backs that we think can be all ACC caliber guys. And yeah, I'm saying that about Shamar Brown because that's what we've heard from this kid throughout fall camp. We have an offensive line that is not only good, but it's big and it's physical and it can move people off the line of scrimmage. Not to mention, we have not one tight end, but we have 2 tight ends that we think are factors in the run blocking department with Elijah Lofton and Alex Bowman. You run a little bit more 2 tight end sets. You force these teams to match that personnel, maybe bring a third linebacker onto the football field. Guess what? When we want to throw the football, we're getting Elijah Lofton on some linebackers in coverage. Maybe that's the matchup that we want to attack in the passing attack, very similar to how Carson Beck and George did it in 2023, where, hey, we put 2 tight ends on the football field, force these teams to bring a third linebacker on the field, and we go and attack them with our tight ends because we know those linebackers can't cover our tight ends. It's going to look different, but I think this offense can have a lot of success. The last storyline before we get into this Notre Dame conversation is David Blay. And I'm sure many Miami fans who are listening to this, you all know who Bud Elliott is, Cover 3 podcast. I know he's a Florida State guy, but I think he's one of the best in the business when it comes to talking the sport. He was at the player symposium the other day, and he talked about who is one of, from a personnel standpoint, talking to all these guys that do this stuff for a living, personnel, the people from all sorts of different programs, said, who is the guy that was like the hidden gem on the defensive side of the football? Everybody started talking about David Blay. Here's what fires me up about David Blay is when David Blay committed to Miami, I thought it was a solid piece to add in the middle of the defensive line. I didn't know if he was going to be a first or second team All ACC guy. It sounds like that's kind of the narrative around David Blay. And what fires me up the most about David Blay is he complements your other 2 interior defensive linemen very, very well. You look at a guy like Ahmad Moten, although at times inconsistent in the run game, Ahmad Moten can rip it up in the pass rush. Justin Scott, we expect to everything we're hearing about this kid, he going to take that step in 2025. But we know Justin Scott can get after the passer at a high level too. One of the things Miami missed last year was that stalwart in the run game. You brought in CJ Clark from NC State to try to get that, but CJ Clark just wasn't that dominant of a football player. Like, are we going to get that from David Blay? Because the thing that you love about David Blay is, yes, he can get after it in the pass rush a little bit. He is a hammer against the run. And so we're adding David Blay and saying, hey, maybe he's a little bit more of a presence in the run game and a factor in the run game than I probably gave him credit for when he committed to Miami. We haven't really talked about him a ton because I feel like we've been talking a lot about Justin Scott. David Blay might be a hit for Miami in the portal. And that's one of the things that I'll add real quick is Miami's done a really good job in the portal really over the last couple of years. When they go out and get guys in the portal, they normally come in and they become difference makers for Miami. And it sounds like Miami's hit on a lot of those guys. David Blay getting very positive returns. Muhammad Torrey coming from Rutgers, very positive returns. Keontae Scott coming from Auburn/Houston, positive returns. Same thing for a guy like Xavier Lucas. The other take that I have is Miami needed to hit on some of these transfer portal additions because they needed to come in and be difference makers for Miami if they wanted to take a step. Everything we've heard out of fall camp is like these transfer portal guys, they're hits. We think they're going to be good for Miami. We think they're going to be what we thought they were when we went out and spent for them in the winter. Early look at Notre Dame. We're a little later than I thought we were going to get into the Notre Dame conversation, but I'm not going to give, groundbreaking analysis right off the bat here, but this continues to be the story of this football game, and that is what team runs the football better. Reading some of the fall camp notes from Notre Dame, that quarterback battle's real. I think a lot of us assumed it was going to be CJ Carr. I think it's a little bit more real than many of us thought. The other thing I'll say is I don't think that Notre Dame's quarterback play, I don't think it's blowing anybody away right now. That's just kind of the vibe that you're getting from the program. And I ain't saying it's going to be bad. I ain't saying it's going to be a disaster, but I don't know if the quarterback play is going to be as good as we thought it was going to be maybe a couple of months ago. Notre Dame's going to try to come on the road. They're going to try to run the football. I don't think they're going to come on the road in a hostile environment like this and ask their first-year starting quarterback to throw the ball all around the yard. Is Miami ready to stop the run? Yeah, I think there's going to be a heavy dose of Jeremiah Love and a guy like Motori, a guy like David Blade. Those guys seem massive in this football game, and vice versa. You look at Miami and say, where is Miami's best avenue to moving the football? Running the football. You look at Notre Dame and say that secondary, and this ain't a shot at Miami's wide receivers. That Notre Dame secondary is about as good as you'll see in the country. I would be very, very surprised if Miami's wide receivers can routinely beat Notre Dame in this game and create separation. I just think Notre Dame's that good in the secondary. Well, guess what our concern is with Notre Dame? It's in the middle of the defensive line. Notre Dame has one guy in their two deep that is over 305 pounds. And not saying it's a bad defensive line, but I'm saying it's a small defensive line. Miami's big up front, and they got a deep running back room. Say, hey, can we move some smaller bodies off the line of scrimmage and run the football on this Notre Dame team? They got some really good linebackers. Notre Dame's not going to be a liability defending the run. That's probably the avenue. That's the matchup that you like if you're Mario Cristobal and Shannon Dawson. We're looking at a Notre Dame defensive line that is smaller and they're thin. They don't have 5, 6, 7 guys that they trust to play. They probably have 4. Can you keep them on the football field? Can you move bodies off the line of scrimmage, force those defensive linemen to play 60 snaps in this football game? I think that's the avenue for Miami to go out and win this football game. If Miami can stop the run from Notre Dame, force a young quarterback to beat them through the air, and then go out and run the football and keep that Notre Dame offense off the field and keep that defense on the field, a superficial comment, but that's kind of what you're looking at for Miami. We got to go out and kind of be the team that, all right, we think the identity of this football team is going to be run the football, control time, possession. We got to go do that against Notre Dame to win that football game. We'll close it out there. Kind of a smorgasbord of topics that I wanted to get into. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.